The Washington Post recently published an article analyzing every false or dishonest claim made by President Donald Trump in the past year. According to the Post, Trump allegedly makes over 5 inaccurate statements every day, and each one is confirmed by the Washington Post's very own fact-checking system. These statistics, presented in such a fashion, portray Trump as an incredibly dishonest figure, and for many the numbers are not hard to believe, since Trump has a reputation for being an extremely impulsive speaker and social media user. Many are using this information to support their claim that Trump is not suitable for his position in office. Other media outlets, such as CNN and The Independent, are publishing similar works, also citing the Washington Post's supposedly objective fact-check system. Trump is by no means the most honest politician to ever hold office. In fact, many of his claims certainly are false, and others are just outright ridiculous, but any ethical journalist would agree that he should be held to a consistent standard, and no matter how much the media disapproves of him, it is important to admit the times when he is correct. But this article proves that most of mainstream media is incapable of doing just that. A closer review of this fact-checking system suggests that the criteria for determining a statement as false or misleading is quite broad and subjective in and of itself. It seems that when deeming one of Trump's statements false, background information, relative privation, and any preconceived notions suddenly become relevant. This database is riddled with logical fallacies, political bias, and semantic inconsistency. For example, the article writes that Trump has stated roughly 46 times that unemployment is at a 17-year low. All available and credible data would suggest that this figure is true. This is a basic statistic backed up by various reliable sources. However, the Post states that due to the fact Trump does not acknowledge unemployment was low even before his election, the statement is false or misleading. Therefore, all 46 times that Trump has referenced the low unemployment rate, it is deemed a false claim by the Post. The statement certainly is not false, and they do not clarify how it is misleading to celebrate decreasing unemployment. This is a pretty decent portion of Trump's 1,950 allegedly inaccurate claims. However, they are not directly inaccurate, and that is only the first example. The article also mentioned that Trump has publicly commented 85 times on the increasing stock market. According to the article, every single one of those 85 claims is false or misleading, only because pre-election Trump predicted the market would likely crash in the near future. At worst, this is simply a contradiction made by Trump, but by no means does it render the claim invalid. It does not change the fact that stocks are in fact at an all-time high. If anything, the media should be ecstatic that Trump is abandoning his campaign views to adopt a more realistic economic view. Even if he is celebrating national economic improvement, the media must find a way to make every aspect of his statements seem invalid. Regardless of whether these statements are true, it is apparently up to the Washington Post's fact-check system to determine their contextual validity, which is quite evidently predisposed against Trump. This system is simply a biased media outlet's subjective interpretation of Trump's statements, ironically making these outlets the false and misleading ones. Let's take a look at some of Trump's other most repeated false claims. I think it's been proven that there is no collusion. This is a claim repeated by Trump 35 times. The fact-checker denies its accuracy on the basis that there was interaction between the parties during Trump's campaign. But this is a false equivalency. Diplomacy is not the same as collusion. A year-long investigation of the alleged collusion, which was revealed to be corrupt, yielded no evidence to such claims. On the contrary, the investigation demonstrated the clear bias within the FBI. In addition, Trump used the phrase "no collusion" in 16 instances during an interview with the New York Times. All 16 uses were considered false. But how is it possible to regard Trump's denial of an allegation as false when his claim has not been legally proven otherwise? Not only is the Washington Post being completely irrational, they are undermining the due process and their own journalistic integrity. We have spent, as of about a month ago, $7 trillion in the Middle East. In the Middle East is worse than it was 17 years ago. The Washington Post counted 20 repeats of this claim, but is also including the instances where Trump cited the $6 trillion figure. The fact-checker tallies the total out at $1.6 trillion, but they do not include veteran care, homeland security spending, or cumulative interest, which proves Trump's initial statement to be far more accurate. This is a perfect example of the system cherry-picking data to conflict with Trump's. The fact checker also includes some of Trump's campaign promises, personal opinions, and obvious hyperboles as dishonest claims, heavily inflating the actual number of Trump's inaccuracies. Another thing to note about the system is that it groups some of Trump's individual statements together in order to give them further implied meaning, even if those claims do not directly contain inaccurate information. They even admit that they go back and change previous claims, if fresh evidence is released. This is interesting, since stated facts should never be subject to shifting interpretation, but instead based on what the truth was at the time. Take this example. If two companies have moved back into our country during Trump's presidency, this statement is true. Businesses such as Ford, Lockheed Martin, and GM are in fact returning to the US. Observe how the fact checker implies so much about a short, simple statement, just so they can find a way to make it seem false. We just analyzed 6 of Trump's most common falsehoods, as stated by the Post. These 6 claims expand to 265 claims if you include the times when Trump has repeated himself, which the Post is doing. They are adding meaning to these claims to make them false, when many of the statements themselves are observably true. This is how they are able to come up with their figure of 2,000 false allegations. Even though I may not personally be the biggest fan of Donald Trump, I think it is incredibly dishonest for these media outlets to be operating in such a prejudiced fashion. I would encourage my viewers to browse the fact check system database themselves, as I am sure they will be surprised just how one-sided and hypocritical the system actually is. Thank you for watching.